Hey guys, this is Alan with a brand new episode of Devil May Play.
Hey guys, Trip here. And how did it come to this?
What are you talking about, Trip?
Well, today we're going to be talking about Mass Effect Andromeda and some of the interesting things we've been learning about the game, some of the issues, the strange piecemeal embargo that they put on the game, which just is bad for everybody. And every time I look at the news about this game, those are the words that keep coming into my head. How did it come to this? How did it come to a point where there's any question that a Mass Effect sequel from BioWare wouldn't automatically be amazing?
Well, that's a good question.
It's a depressing question that I have to that we have. It's a depressing question that we have to address. Now, I just want to start by saying this, just a little quick anecdote into the life and times of Trip here. So I've been a fan of Mass Effect since I first heard the rumors of the game years and years ago. I think I was in 8th grade when the game actually ended up coming out. And those of you who know me know that I cut my teeth on games like Knights of the Old Republic, Jade Empire, all those great BioWare RPGs that came out during, I know there are games that were much older than that, but the games I grew up with were Star Wars, were Jade Empire, stuff like that, and later Dragon Age, which I still love that series despite the some of the issues I have with it. But Mass Effect was that game that I always came back to. It was a game that really affected me at a certain stage in my life that I feel like every child gets affected a lot. When you're 12, 13, you're coming into your own, you're kind of becoming your own person. And I feel like Mass Effect played a large role in the way I think, the way I behave, and just in general, the way I look at the world. So
wait,
when I say that...
Were you Renegade or Paragon, though? That's important.
I mean, okay, my Commander Shepard, who I always play FemShep because FemShep is just the biggest badass. She's my fucking hero. Literally one of my actual heroes, not just in video gaming, but in everything, is FemShep.
Okay.
Now, I always played her as not quite like... I guess you could say mostly Paragon in that, I always, if I could, I would want to help people. But like, if somebody's giving me shit, or if somebody's freaking out, or I need to calm them down, punch to the face. I could never resist having her punch the shit out of people. It's just one of the most satisfying things that I've been able to do in a video game that I've always wanted. I think everybody has always wanted to do that in a video game, when somebody is just running their mouth off or saying bad stuff about you because they don't understand what you did or why you did it. Like that newscaster lady. And I think it was the first game. Was it?
It might have been the second one, because it
might have been the second one.
Jessica Cho type character. It was modeled. I think it was modeled after her, right? She was an IGN.
I think maybe, but
something like that.
You can just punch the shit out of her on a live newscast. And it's just, I love that game. I love everything that game is about. Now, when I say that Mass Effect kind of raised me in a way, it really did define the latter part of my childhood, going from middle school to high school to early college. Now, I remember, I think it was my freshman year. I think the third game was already out during my freshman year, and everybody I knew was just depressed.
Oh,
just
that
in
ending,
a fugue state of what the fuckery. And this will tell you how important a franchise is to certain people. I've never seen anything like this happen before outside of the Elder Scrolls, where the developers fucked up so royally in regards to the narrative that the fans had to come up with something to explain it that was better than anything the developers ever could have come up with. This happens in the Elder Scrolls all the time. Just go to /r/TES lore to see all of the cool, crazy apocrypha we come up with to explain all the weird retcons and changes and inconsistencies from the brilliant backstory of that game to the piss poor narratives. That's a great example. But
sounds like you struck a nerve here.
Every time we bring up the Elder Scrolls, it strikes a nerve, and it's the same thing with Mass Effect for me, buddy.
Because do you remember that there was something like 300 cupcakes, something like that, like 300 cupcakes sent to BioWare, and there was like 100 blue, 100 green, and 100 red, or something like that, because people were mocking the ending.
Because they literally said in a quote, I think it was somewhere between the first and second game, they said, this is going to be a trilogy. We know that Shepard's story is going to be a trilogy, and we're going to make sure that by the end of it, all of the choices you made from the first game will affect the ending.
Well,
and they specifically said, we're not going to have just a red pick press the blue button, press the red button, press the green button. It's like they were fucking with us by the time the third game
which is like the Fable 2 ending. That's how like Fable 2 ended. Where you just pick. It was the most anticlimactic ending ever until Mass Effect 3.
I could get into Fable is like the third series in that triumvirate of games of series and IPs that I love and hate in equal part.
Yeah,
the Elder Scrolls, Fable, and Mass Effect. But
okay, so I remember
that
the outrage over the ending,
and you remember the indoctrination theory and all of that, and that's what I'm talking about. How we had to come up with something that was brilliant, that would have not only fixed everything in that piss poor ending, but would have turned it into one of the most brilliant stories ever told in video game history. And I bring this up, and I bring all of this up, this whole anecdote about, how I grew up with this series, the fact that everybody I knew at my college was just depressed at that ending, and the whole indoctrination ending. I bring that all up because that's how important this series is to a lot of people. And it's fascinating that BioWare could have created something that's still such a relatively young IP in the grand scheme of things that can have that sort of effect on people. And it's because of Commander Shepard. It's because of who she was. And I always default to she, like I said. It's because of the people around her. It was because of what that series was about. It went beyond just the gameplay, which was also great. I love the gameplay of all three games in different ways. I like certain things about it. I like certain things less, but it went beyond that. There's a certain ethos, there's a certain vibe to the whole Mass Effect series and what it's really about at the end of the day.
It's something akin to like Star Trek, where there was like some good philosophical questions posed, and that's why the fan base has lasted for so long. And it's not just like another sci-fi game. It was, it had questions of existence and like having the Reapers,
right? And a lot of games have that, but there's this. I can describe it is that embodied in Shepard is this sort of humanistic optimism that I've never seen any other game have. I've never seen any other, or really any other anything have this sort of, again, humanistic optimism. And what I mean by that is, like, no matter how you play Shepard, no matter if she's Paragon, Renegade, or what have you, the thing that unites all the different Shepard characters is that she's human. And she's human in all the best possible ways. She's ridiculously driven, ambitious. She has this faith in humanity and what we can do and what it means to be human that supersedes everything, which is why everybody got so pissed off at that. That's really what it comes down to. There's a lot of reasons people got pissed off at that ending. But what pissed me off, what pissed off a lot of people, is that everybody knows that no matter how you're playing Commander Shepard, once that fucking Godchild thing tells you, oh yeah, it turns out you don't really have any choice here. The Reapers have to exist because this bullshit cycle between synthetics and organics. You know what Shepard would have done? Shepard would have punched the shit out of that kid and fought to the last breath, knowing that, yeah, we're probably going to die, but fuck it. We're humanity. We're not going to go out like no punk bitch. We are going to throw a blow at the Reapers, make them remember this, and leave our mark behind. So hopefully when another species comes, they're going to see what happened to us, and maybe, just maybe, they'll be able to push even further than we did. But, you're stuck in this whole cycle that goes against everything that all the Mass Effect games were saying humanity should be against. And it just frustrates me. I was telling Lark before we started this that I could talk about Mass Effect for years. I really could. But we're getting off track here. The reason why I'm letting myself get so emotional over this is because I was looking forward, and I still am looking forward to Mass Effect Andromeda. And I've been purposefully keeping myself away from it. From a lot of the news.
But
a lot of the buzz and hype. But it's... some of the stuff I've been learning has kind of drawn me in a negative way.
Well, first, can we talk about... I just want to say Shepard, both FemShep and MaleShep, looked like a badass. And these new characters look like...
Ryder.
Dog shit.
Even the name pisses me off a little bit. And I know that's nitpicky, but even the name...
So is the looks, but I mean, you have to... Shepard... it matters. You're playing as these characters... But I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. You make a good point about the characters, and it goes beyond just the way they look. A lot of the dialogue I've been seeing, a lot of the writing, it's just
the personas, charismas, and it's just not there.
Yeah, it's not there at all. And see, now Shepard, I'm not gonna ever say that Shepard's behavior and kind of bombastic nature was anything resembling a regular human being. I'm not gonna act like that. No, Shepard was a badass who had a bunch of one-liners and awesome quotes and
a wonderful bromance,
somebody in the face.
In my case, a wonderful bromance with Garrus, because I played Male Shepard.
Of course, everybody loves Garrus, but yeah, I'm not gonna act like I'm not gonna act like Commander Shepard was like a shining example of a realistic, down-to-earth, grounded character in any way, but there was always this sense of a bit of self-awareness in kind of the silliness of her character.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things you could do that just kind of went beyond the pale. And it was kind of an acknowledgement of, okay, this isn't meant to be taken 100% seriously. It's a difficult it's a difficult line. It's a thin line. And from what I've seen of Ryder, it's just, somebody on Reddit said it best. It feels like she's talking, she or he is talking in hashtags and tweets, kind of. It feels really cringeworthy. It's just the dialogue isn't there. The animations don't help at all.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is, you might want to double check this for me, so don't quote me on this, but I've been reading that the game is actually not being developed by the same studio.
No, that's 100% correct.
It's not being developed by the
first Mass Effect game I think it's BioWare Montreal.
Yeah, it's BioWare Montreal.
And BioWare Edmonton was the one that did Dragon Age and Mass Effect and Jade Empire. All their I really don't know what this studio has done. I don't remember seeing what they did.
And to be fair, either way, it pains me to say this, but I don't think it would have changed much if it was the Edmonton studio, because I mean there was a massive brain drain there. Almost everybody who worked on, like, they're all gone. Like, I hear one of them is like making beer now or something.
There's 3 founders, I think. 2 of the 3 founders left, if not all 3. It was like Ray something and Greg something. I've just been reading a Game Informer article about the history of BioWare, and it's really interesting and sad at the same time, because they talked about the EA takeover and the EA acquisition, and they talked about like the early days of them, when they get the Star Wars license to make Knights of the Old Republic. They even talked a little bit about Mass Effect 3, and you're going to find this funny. One of the I don't remember who it was. It wasn't one of the founders, but it was somebody that worked on the game, was saying, we had 42 million permutations. I worked it out, but players only focus on those last 30 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, because there's the last fucking 30 seconds. Like, it doesn't matter if this ship is, he's like, this ship could be there, or that ship could be there, and this character could be there, and that. I'm like, it doesn't matter, dude. You still. Another person actually said it very well. They said, like, we really drop the ball when it comes to player agency, and the moment where the player feels like they're no longer in control, they get mad. And that's the thing, is we were told specifically by the developers, you're going to have a direct impact on the story, and instead we changed colors on a motherfucking beam. That is not a satisfying ending. We can go to Fallout and show good examples.
As I recall, those, and I'm going to get back to Andromeda in a second, but as I recall, at least one or two of those endings, if not all three, were just ripped from Deus Ex.
I'm not sure about that one.
Like, when you really get down to it, like, one of them is, I think one of them was like you merge with the Reapers or something. Right. One of them is, a lot. Like, I think at least two of those endings were exactly the same as the endings to the original.
And there was something about the ending only having, like, the main writing team didn't do the ending. They were trying to, I don't know if they were rushing or what it was, but it was only like
I think
two people that were writing the ending, and they just completely fucked it up. And like the main team didn't even know like that was the ending until it shipped. Who knows? But getting back to Andromeda,
when it comes to Andromeda, we were talking about how
where there's smoke, there's fire, though. Like, we're talking about something that people consider nitpicky, which is possibly considered nitpicky, which is animations, right? And there have been multiple videos on Reddit today.
But here's the thing, like, BioWare has always been bad with animations, always. Like, I can go back to Knights of the Old Republic and look at how robotic they look. But here's the thing, like, I'm not excusing that in the slightest. Just follow me here, because
sure, I'm following.
I mean, all of the like, they should have fixed this by now. Just like, Bethesda should have, improved player agency and, should have fixed their bugs. Like, just because a developer studio is known for doing something, that doesn't mean we should excuse it. But my point is, it seems like they've retained, from what little we've seen, because let me make this clear, this game could be incredible. Who knows?
Right.
We're just talking about our concerns, and I hope we're wrong.
Sure.
But it feels like, from what we have seen, that they've kept all the bad stuff from BioWare games, but also taken away all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, the dialogue isn't that great. The story, like, it, and again, like, we don't know what the story is exactly, but from what we've seen, like, the beginning is important. The beginning is always important.
Right.
And it does not leave a good impression.
Yeah, there have certainly been mixed opinions. I've heard that I don't really have issues with what I've heard about the combat, but I've heard that the quest giving is very similar to Dragon Age Inquisition,
and that was the worst part of Inquisition. And I like
side
Inquisition.
Missions
I
felt
like that
very
game.
MMO-ish. I think a lot of people have said that. I'm certainly not the first person to point that out. I've just kind of, to be honest with you, the game has kind of fallen off my radar a little bit, just because, one, I've been playing Zelda a ton. Two, Horizon Zero Dawn just came out, by the way, which is the #1 selling new IP for the PlayStation 4, which is fantastic. Because I played about a couple hours of that game, and it was just breathtaking. And it was one of those games. It was one of those games where I truly felt like this is something that could not have been played on PS3. It's beyond just graphics. It's like the world that they created. But I think what we're talking about is where there's smoke, there's fire. If this is, and I'm sorry, like you were saying, animation in the previous BioWare games isn't that good. I saw a comparison with Mass Effect 1 and 2 and the new one, and the actual animation, like the movement, was better in the old ones. And what I think is troubling is this is something that people are going to notice right away, and it's something that they kind of dropped the ball on. So if this is the beginning of the game and people are already noticing these things, shortcuts or whatever led to this, there's got to be more problems in the game. Like, you don't ship a game with these glaring issues and just say, oh well, like, going to Assassin's Creed Unity, everyone remembers those hilarious, issues with the models. Well, the game was a buggy mess for so long. So it just goes to show we have right to be cautious. And this is kind of like I guess we could call this like a buyer beware episode. Like, even for you Mass Effect fans out there, take a second thought before you pre-order it. Maybe wait for the reviews, maybe wait for some fan feedback before you spend those $60 or whatever, if you want to get the special edition. I don't even know if there is one. And I'm going to be playing Zelda for months, so I'll definitely know for sure whether or not I'm going to buy the game because I'll wait for those opinions.
Yeah, see, and I normally wouldn't look at something like animations and say this is a sign that there are other problems in the game. I normally wouldn't do that, but it's the magnitude.
Oh, they're horrible though. They're not
I've
just
seen
bad.
people. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. I've seen people compare it on Reddit, saying that these are basically placeholder animations from early alpha. Like that's like if this were any other game, that's what it would be. That they obviously don't know if that's the case for this, but if this were any other game, those just be placeholder animations waiting for something better. And the fact that they left that in as is, that is a bad sign.
And what was this piecemeal embargo? I've seen this talked about. Was it like reviewers could only play the first 5 hours or something like that?
Well, they can only review on the first. They can only talk about the first couple hours. And again, it's a situation where everybody loses because like in a lot of the stuff that I've read, the websites and people talking about how much they didn't like the first couple hours, they made it clear we can't talk about what happens after this. So, it just leaves us in this state of confusion. Like, well, does it get better? Does it get worse? And yeah, so it's this weird piecemeal embargo that doesn't help anybody at the end of the day, because now, I would assume that BioWare expected those first couple hours to blow us away. And then, maybe they wanted the embargo just in case, stuff later down the line wasn't as good or whatever. But that leads us to another question. Did BioWare not know that we would respond this way? Did they not know that we would address these issues? They must know that these issues exist, right? Like to have something like that because it'll be one thing if they just put an embargo on, that can happen for any number of reasons, but to have an embargo to have an embargo, but then allow us to see the beginning of your game, it would imply that you have a certain sense of confidence in at least the beginning of your game. So I'm just wondering what the disconnect is here between BioWare and the critics and consumers. For BioWare to apparently be so proud of this that they said, okay, we're going to have an embargo, but we really want you guys to see what we did at the beginning. We just got to show you this. And we're sure that once you see this, you're not going to, you'll be fine with the embargo because you'll know this is a good game. But then this.
Well, it's funny because, actually, this kind of ties into something I was working on today. Quick plug, shameless plug. I'm now working on a series called Electronic Odyssey for a website called Finnacle. I'm going to put it in the description. And I wrote a kind of a story about one of the worst games I've ever played, Superman, for the 64. Do you remember that game?
I've never played it, but I remember
one of the worst reviewed games of all time. And basically what I was saying is that reviews don't matter. And it's kind of funny because it's kind of the opposite of what we're saying. But the bottom line is that reviews are meant to be kind of like an indicator, kind of like a what do you call it? A prediction of will you like this game? To me, that's what reviews are for, not critiques. I'm talking about reviews. When a review comes out and there's a score assigned to it, if it's a 9 or a 10, you're assuming that score doesn't mean that game is it's not an objective assessment of the game's value. Like this game is perfect. It's would most people like this game? So you kind of have to work, and I'm sure that's why I'm saying like buyer beware. We've talked about this before. There are very few incentives these days to pre-order games, really, when you come to think about it. It is a $60 investment, and pre-order culture has just gotten so out of control that, waiting for reviews is certainly one good thing to do. I also if there's a game that I'm really on the fence about, I don't just wait for reviews. I look at gameplay videos and so forth and so on, but I'm not even sure when it comes to games like, you remember Metal Gear Solid 5 came out, reviewers were pretty positive because they couldn't finish the whole game a lot of times. And then it was like in that second half where the quality dipped. So here it's like even more curious where, like you said, they thought, well, people are going to be so blown away by the first couple hours. And then the opposite's kind of happened, it seems like these previews are going to work against them, if that even makes sense. Like, it's actually kind of making people lose interest in the game rather than gain interest, which is the exact opposite of what you want if you're a developer. It's almost like it doesn't make sense, because if they were cynical and they were aware of the problems and they're just like, screw the consumer, we're going to ship the game as is, put an embargo on the game, and then you're going to get all the people just buy it anyways, right? But in this case, there are people, I'm sure, that are canceling their pre-orders now because of what they've seen and because they're concerned about it. So it's kind of like it's a lose-lose, I guess.
Yeah, and that's why I'm puzzled. I'm very, like, the more I think about it, the less it makes sense for them to have done it this way, unless for some reason they really were confident in this and it's not going over the way that they thought. That's another point of concern then. If they think that this is acceptable, then what's the rest of the game like?
Exactly.
Like, it's a lot of you guys are going to be watching this and thinking that, we're nitpicking, or, we're extrapolating too much from this. But again, when you add all this up, the magnitude of the problem, it would be one thing if they were just kind of janky animations. Who cares? But the magnitude of just how bad they look,
well, it's immersion breaking.
At this point, it is like I can take janky animations, but especially in a game that's so dialogue heavy, yeah, I'm used to janky animations. Just look at Morrowind.
Yeah.
But especially a game that's so dialogue heavy, that's so, emotion heavy, and, what's going to be going on, what's going to be happening. To go from Dragon Age Inquisition, which, wasn't great in that regard, but, I actually felt like the characters' emotions were matching what they were saying.
Yeah. To
this, like, it's, if you want to have an emotional moment, it's both an auditory and a visual experience.
Sure.
And if you don't have half of that, or if half of that is out of sync with the other half, then it's jarring, and it's not going to work.
Right. No, you're exactly right. That was what I was thinking was, some people are going to say, who cares? It's just animation. And, you have games like Telltale Games, which have been using kind of the same engine forever, and people have criticized it, but they do manage to capture like the basic emotions pretty well. And in a game where you're trying to form bonds with characters, it's going to be super distracting if their eyes are like looking all over the place and their lips are moving really incorrectly. It's just going to be really, really distracting. It's almost like I'd rather they did it the way they do in Zelda, where it's like there's some cutscenes and then there's a lot of stuff that's just text. So they like do animation for faces when they're talking, but for the most part, when they're doing text speech, it's not nearly as synced. Like, this is the worst, because you're just making people watch two badly animated or multiple badly animated characters, and you're not, as a player, you're not going to be able to be invested in the moment, because you're just going to be thinking like, what's wrong with your face?
Yeah, what I did there. So that's why we're dwelling. That's why we're dwelling on this so much.
Because we know that the Mass Effect games have a lot of dialogue and have a lot of cutscenes and have a lot of characters.
And with that in mind, and with all of that in mind, the fact that they shipped it in this state, it really is a, like you said, when there's smoke, there's fire scenario. In this case, I could totally understand if the issues weren't this big, if it was just like a little janky, but this bad, what does that say about the rest of the game? If something this important, based on what the game focuses on, is this bad.
And the last thing I kind of want to say is, and I don't proclaim to be an animator or know much about that, but from what I've seen, it doesn't look like something that's going to be able to be fixed easily or quickly, because it seems to be like a problem with all the animations. And some people were saying that it's a problem with rigging, which I'm not 100% sure what that means, but it has something to do with like attaching muscles to bones, basically like the actual physics of the characters, that would be a humongous issue. Basically, you'd have to rebuild all the characters if that was the case, which, again, seems time-intensive and money-intensive, and I really doubt that the studio would spend a couple $1 million just to reanimate everything, but Who knows? At this point, I think all we can certainly say is we're concerned. We think you should be concerned. And maybe, like I said, consider holding off on that pre-order or whatever. But that's up to you.
I hope we're wrong.
Yeah.
I really hope that we're wrong. But
if this is the worst thing in the game, it's not going to be game breaking
if
necessarily.
If this is the worst thing in the game, then it's not going to be game breaking. It's going to be annoying. Yeah, it's going to be annoying. It'll definitely be a minus, but it's not going to be game breaking in and of itself. And by the way, I'm looking at a side by side of 2007 animations from Mass Effect to 2017, and I see what you're saying now. It is.
Told you.
It is far worse.
Yeah, like the actual resolution is better.
Well, of course, the graphics are better, but the
animation is not.
It is way worse. This is ridiculous. But I feel like, just in closing, I feel like if the game ends up in the way I'm kind of thinking but hoping it's not going to, there's going to be some interesting post-mortems on this game.
Yeah.
There's going to be some interesting analysis into what went wrong and how. Because the more I think about this, the more I think about them shipping the game in this condition, the more I think about them at least being proud enough to not have an embargo on that beginning, the more it makes me wonder what the hell happened.
I'm sure we'll find out in the coming months.
In a couple days, we're going to find out.
And speaking of projects that we're still concerned about, let's talk about the Batman.
Oh, God.
So,
yeah.
Trip and I have a history. This is kind of like our post whatever discussion. We've been talking back and forth about DC films. And I just recently saw Logan and loved it. And I think that Fox really should stick with these. Like, I think Fox should stick with their niche now. They found it. Like, do Deadpool, do Wolverine, do those types of, or do Logan, do those types of films. I think that they could really find their audience if they stick to these more R-rated, more adult films. Because the X-Men universe to me was always a little bit darker, right? A little bit more. The tone was just completely different from Marvel. Like, the humans always viewed the mutants as like a threat. So obviously you don't want to. I don't want to see an R-rated Iron Man, but an R-rated Logan was amazing. Now, getting back to projects that are in trouble. Apparently, we all know Ben Affleck left the project left the project as director, and then they hired Matt Reeves, who did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes or Rise of the Planet. I get those names mixed up. The most recent Planet of the Apes movie that came out a couple years ago.
I think it was Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And then
I actually liked that movie. I don't know what other people thought of it, though.
Both those Apes movies were good. I thought the remakes or whatever you want to call them. Now we're hearing whispers that the Batman movie's being completely rewritten. And they were supposed to have started filming, I think, this year. And they had already cast like the villain, and now that's up in the air, and I'm just like, oh my goodness. So it's just like our weekly DC drama. I don't care. Like, I'm not a big person when it comes to gossip, but I see movie news and I'm just like, ooh, like I get my popcorn out and I'm just sitting there at work just munching, just think about how much money they're throwing away.
Yeah.
Hiring screenwriters and dropping directors and breaking contracts, and I'm just like.
Yeah, especially when it's DC, because at this point it's just getting laughable.
It really is.
Like, we're past the point of being friendly when we talk about DC and their fuck ups in regards to movies. We passed that point episodes ago.
This
is just silly.
If Wonder Woman sucks, there's going to be so many people that are mad.
If Wonder Woman sucks, it's over. It's over. Like I said in the last time we talked about this, if Wonder Woman sucks, it's over, because
they'll still
what more can they do? Their entire quote unquote cinematic universe is based on several shit movies and one mediocre one.
Well, here's the thing. I think if Ben Affleck leaves, which, dude, I think he's close. I think if it goes badly, he will straight up leave. Then they're fucked. Because you can't handle.
Can he break his contract?
I'm sure they can't throw him in jail for breaking contract. He's probably just gonna lose a ton of money or have to pay a ton of money. Like, you you get what I'm saying? I'm sure there's some way for him to get out. He'll hire some lawyer to get him out on a technicality or whatever, or he'll drag his heels so much that they get sick of him and fire him. You know what I mean? Like, there are definitely ways to get off a project if you want.
You know, if this were
It's just gonna get ugly.
If this were any other movie series, any other company, I would say, Lark, you're being crazy. This would never happen. But after all the shit we've talked about on this show about this movie,
Yeah.
It could happen at this point. I don't know, man.
We'll see. So that's two things we can look forward to. Mass Effect, Andromeda, and the Batman.
Andromeda sucking and Batman sucking.
All right.
What a time to be alive.
On that positive note.
On that positive note, we will see you next time. Hopefully talking about something a bit more positive.
Exactly. All right. See you later.
See ya.
Man, you are on fire on that one.